Welcome. My name is Natasha Sherman, and I am your host. And this is a second half-hour interview I'm doing with my guests, Jeffrey Deskovic and Lorenzo Johnson. And in case you haven't seen the first half hour, I want to tell you a little bit about who they are. So Jeffrey Deskovic, in 1990, at the age of 17, was wrongfully convicted of rape and murder, and he spent the next 16 years in prison. He was one of the so-called lucky ones who was exonerated and released from prison after 16 years. Authorities knew his DNA did not match that of the actual perpetrator, who 3 years later, and this is where we have to get really serious about what happens when we put innocent people in jail. 3 years later, the real guilty party went on to murder another young woman and mother of two. But rogue police officers, prosecutors, and other law enforcement personnel knowingly and maliciously accused, prosecuted, and eventually secured his conviction. Jeffrey is now in law school, and he started the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which is committed to fighting wrongful conviction through raising awareness, seeking legislative changes, exonerating the wrongfully convicted, both in DNA and non-DNA cases, and to the reintegration of exonerees. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me once again.
Happy you're willing to stay this extra half hour.
Absolutely. I couldn't think of a person I'd rather spend it with.
Thank you. So my next guest is Lorenzo Johnson, and he spent almost 22 years incarcerated for a crime that he didn't commit. Most of us can't even imagine this. He was wrongfully convicted of a 1995 murder in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and he won release from his life without parole sentence in 2012. After the Third Circuit Federal Court of Appeals ruled that there was legally insufficient evidence for his conviction. He remained free for 4 months, after which the U.S. Supreme Court reinstated the conviction, ordered him back to prison to resume the sentence. His defense was not allowed to file briefs or make oral arguments for his position, and he returned to prison on June 14, 2012. With the support of the Pennsylvania Innocence Project, he continued to fight for his freedom, and 5 years later, he was resentenced and released from prison. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to be able to give you a voice here. So we ended the last show talking about the fact that, you were released, and then you get this call, your lawyer's crying on the phone, you can't even understand him, but the one thing you did understand was you have to go back. And then that process, and then the drive back to prison, and the choice that you made because you were innocent, the choice not to run, going back to trust a system that had failed you, and walking in that prison door, knowing that you were going to continue to fight. And it took 5 years.
Yeah.
And in the end, it wasn't even that you were exonerated. You decided to take a plea. So tell us about that.
Well, when I went back to prison, the legal team did a top to bottom, thorough job on investigation, from the beginning of my case to the end. They left no stone unturned. And they came up on a treasure trove of Brady violations.
Meaning
Could we just, you mentioned your legal team. Could you just give a recognition at this point as to all the entities that helped you in various ways?
At different times, different entities represented me or came together. The initial call of my legal team was Michael Wiseman and the Capital Habeas Unit. And as time went on, the Pennsylvania Innocence Project got involved. The Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation got involved. Then you have other people like the Abolitionist Law Center. You had
Lonnie.
Decarcerate Pennsylvania. Lonnie Sorey became the face of the media.
So how great, considering that you started out with an attorney who didn't even interview you before your trial.
Exactly.
Well, that was part of the reason why you decided not to run too, in addition to your innocence, but the confidence that this was going to come out correct. You knew you had the right team.
I didn't want to, I don't like turning my back on people who supports me. And I felt I know how to beat them because I beat them before. And with this supporting cast right here, it shouldn't be no reason why I should lose. Let me fast forward now to what you were saying about this plea. It took 5 years to get back in the courtroom.
Did you anticipate it taking that long?
Nah, not at all.
We thought it was going to be maybe 6 months to
6
a
months
year.
to a year. It took 2 years to get in the courtroom after we uncovered evidence that they withheld of my innocence, which
Right
was
from the beginning.
From the beginning, blockbuster evidence that warrants a new trial immediately or release immediately. They fought me tooth and nail through this whole process, knowing I was innocent. From day one, they let false testimony go uncorrected from the lower courts all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. They even let the United States Supreme Court judges make a decision knowing that the decision that they was based on, that they quoted from witnesses, was false testimony. They never corrected it.
This was which entity? Could you just give them
This
the
is
credit?
the Attorney General from Pennsylvania that was prosecuting my case. All this time, we never had possession of these statements. We was told that the only witness they had to the case never made a statement.
And it turns out that she
18
was
years
actually
later-
one of the people that was a suspect.
18 years later, we found out that not only did she make a statement, she was considered a suspect by the Harrisburg Police Department.
And then she turned and testified against you, pointed the finger at you.
Saying that I was there. That I was there. I didn't do that. I was there. But there was no eyewitness to this case. Mm-hmm. The whole case is circumstantial. So you figure the the Third Circuit Court of Appeals on October 4th, 2011, vacated my sentence on insufficient evidence, which is equivalent to a not guilty verdict. That's a legal exoneration. When you bring this into play, the new evidence that we just found out, what do you have? Like, what do you do? Instead of them doing the right thing, they continue to fight me, postpone. They was postponing every which way they could do.
Why do you think that is?
Because they don't want to admit to what they did. And this goes on frequently.
And they're willing to sacrifice a human being's life?
Yes. And that's the problem with innocent people taking guilty pleas, taking no contest pleas, taking no contending pleas, Alfred pleas. This is a big epidemic that's going on in the criminal justice system that's really, the light is not really being shined on it. Me, myself, personally, I feel if you're innocent, your case needs to be fought in the courtroom and outside the courtroom in the media, because the media is going to say what the courtroom ain't going to say, because sometimes the courtroom will say, like Jeff said earlier, well, this is harmless error, or this is not timely. You can't raise this because you failed to the media is going to tell you what it is. I went on an all-out platform to have rallies in front of the Attorney General's office, to yell and scream my innocence and back it up with support from other people. I started a website, freelorenzojohnson.org, and this website, I did this to get support with signatures. I didn't know that it was going to catch fire the way it did. Before long, I had signatures from all 50 states. And then after the 50 states, it caught fire out of the country, and there's 53 different countries, people were signing the petition, writing to the Attorney General themselves. So in the media, it came alive. And in Pennsylvania, you don't see that in Pennsylvania.
In terms of the petition, I just wanted to jump in and just mention really quickly, the foundation, we rented a couple of buses so his family and supporters from New York could go from New York to Pennsylvania, and we delivered the petitions to the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office after doing a rally outside the office. William Lopez was participating, who we talked about before. Doing rallies and the media stuff was the key way that he fought, and that was the main contribution of the foundation to the effort at
So it sounds to me that they kind of dug in their heels deeper.
No, they did in a way, but they lied to the media, because in the media, after they agreed to meet with my counsel and say they're going to do an independent investigation into my innocent claims and that they'll do a thorough investigation, they never intended to do that. What happened was this is how we came across the evidence that we had, the blockbuster evidence. When it was time for them to reply to our appeal, they were asked for uncontested 90-day continuance.
What does that mean?
Meaning that your counsel don't oppose the prosecution 90 days continuance to file 90 days later. So this became a pattern with them. So they started saying...
They just kept postponing it.
They started saying... They did it for 2 years. They started saying, okay, well, if you give us another 90 days, we'll give you a clean version of your discovery.
And they were also making you think like they were like if they reached the same conclusion that your legal team was saying, then that meant they were going to go into court and agree that you should be released. When actually they never did that. In fact, they were saying, "Hey, you're late. You're 60 days late. You shouldn't be allowed to argue this."
And in my case, for 2 years they did this, and every time they turned something over, it was blockbuster stuff, like stuff that we never knew that was missing from my discovery.
That would have pointed to your innocence.
Yeah. So
they're giving this to you like piecemeal.
For 2 years. And then after the 2 years is up, when it was time for them to make a decision and answer our actual innocence appeal that was pending, they would go ahead. They went on 2013, December 24th, Christmas Eve. They filed the over 100-page petition of why I shouldn't get relief. They did not say he shouldn't get relief because he's guilty. They said he shouldn't get relief because he didn't file his timeliness. So now it went from me being the guilty person to he wasn't timely, so don't listen to what he's saying.
So
okay, he got evidence of his innocence.
Right.
Okay, we turned it over to him. But he could have been got that a long time ago. Do not give him relief. So what? He's innocent. He didn't file timely.
Maybe you can explain just what the Pennsylvania 60-day rule is. I think that's important.
You got, with newly discovered evidence, you got 60 days in Pennsylvania under the ADBA, the Anti-Death Penalty Effective Act. You got 60 days if you come across something new to file it to the court, to preserve it, so you won't be something called time bar, meaning that if you get time bar for something, you can't get past it, you can't raise that issue no more unless you can show some newly discovered evidence.
So if the paperwork isn't in time, that's it. That's information is dead.
So basically...
And they kept asking you to postpone so that ultimately...
They get their plan together. So what happened was they blamed me for not knowing what was in their file that they never turned over to me. They blamed me for saying, well, you should have, this was in the file, you should have...
So at this point, you can see what's coming down the pike. You can see that they've set you up. So tell us about, because I want to get to this before the end of the show, tell us about your plea.
The plea was, I was granted evidentiary hearings for my Post-Conviction Relief Act appeals that I filed. And when you get evidentiary hearings this late in your case on these grounds, it's like it's something big in the criminal justice system. It's nothing little. It's like things could change instantly. Midnight before the evidentiary hearing, they ran to the lawyers with pleas, saying that, okay, well, if he plead no contest, he don't got to admit to anything. If he plead no contest, he could go home tomorrow. So, you look at it like that. I didn't know what was going on because the couple of days that I was transported from state prison to the county prison, my lawyers was coming to see me with boxes of legal work. We'd sit in the visit room. We'd go back and forth for what's about to take place. So the day before, they didn't come in with no boxes, and one of my lawyers was crying again. So I wondered, he said, you're going home. So first thing I said is, did they drop their prosecution? Because, oh no, they didn't drop the prosecution, but you got a chance to walk out tomorrow. So I said, well, I'm not walking out tomorrow with nothing that doesn't belong to me. And that's when things got quiet amongst the lawyers. We sat there, we started talking. A little bit known to me that the lawyers already contacted my wife and my family, told them everything that was going on. And your family, their first instinct is, I don't care, get out of here. You've been there 22 years. You've been back 5 years again.
Yeah.
Like, get out of there. It put me under pressure because my mother's older. My mother-in-law just finished fighting chemo. So it's Supreme Court in the back of my head is just ringing in the back of my head. For the time I was incarcerated, you know how many appeals I had denied from the state to the federal? So I entertained
the predictable future from your past was that you were going to be there a lot longer.
But the thing is I felt myself that I was never supposed to have to take this plea. No innocent person should have to take a plea bargain. No, I don't care if it's no contest, not guilty, no look contende, or Alfred, you don't post to. But, you know, the attorneys, they're going to tell you something. But I felt myself that the attorneys was scared in a way because they didn't want to be put in a position of another higher court overturning, because I felt I was about to win in this court. I still felt I would have won in this court. So, you know, it weighed on me. This plea deal weighed on me. And it's bittersweet to me because I feel like, you know, it messed my whole life. It put guilty clothes back on me again. And I went back to prison to exonerate myself. I didn't go back to prison to come back out with a conviction. That wasn't a part of the plan. And, you know, what weighed on me mostly was my family. Like when I left the visit, I got back on the phone, my mother, my wife. So I'm talking to them, and they first thing on the phone is you come home to me, like, what's going on? Like, you got a chance. So it's more from your family now, pushing. Don't you know this could happen? You know what they did to this? So it's not me doing something for myself. It's me doing something for them. Because me, myself, I'll be sitting in the cell right now still waiting for my justice to come.
Yeah.
And that's what took effect on me and made me into the no contest plea. And I'm one of many that been in this position. A lot of people don't go home from a life sentence and come back. In my story, it's not that many stories, but these stories of these
innocent
pleas
people.
Of innocent people taking pleas is big, and light need to be shined on that.
Yeah.
And if you didn't take it, in addition to the possibility of losing, but even if you had won, I mean, they were threatening to appeal.
That was the threat. The threat was,
we'll appeal it again.
You know, the lawyers felt
prison. Go ahead.
The lawyers felt that, okay, if we win right here, they're gonna the judge is gonna make a decision anywhere from 6 months to a year. They're gonna cross appeal that decision to the next court. It's gonna take a year or two. To the next court, year or two. It's gonna take all the way to federal court. So you're looking at anywhere between 3 and 5 years of going back and forth, and you praying to God that the next court don't flip this sentence back over, and then everything is.
You know, I can't imagine being sent to prison, being innocent, spending all those years in prison, knowing you're innocent, fighting your case, being told you're innocent, having that taken away from you, and then having to make that terrible decision of, you know, I want to stay and fight. There's no way I should have to take on this guilty plea, but my family. So, like you said, you took the plea, but you're still wearing a guilty man's suit because the collateral effects of that are such that by law, you're still on parole, you still have a criminal record against you, and all the stuff that happens to people who are sent to jail. Yes.
Yeah, for example, you know, Lorenzo he can't vote. You know, when you apply for housing, you know, do you have a conviction? There's that. There's on-job applications. Have you been convicted, you know, of a crime? I mean, these are all the things. And then there's still the stigma, which would be much different if you were exonerated. So all these collateral effects are very real. And on top of that, you know, he cannot be compensated.
Right. And I'm sure that's why they push it. Having taken the plea, and I want to read something, which I think you wrote, actually. Having taken the plea, can you still fight for innocence and to exonerate?
We have a couple of things that's going on. My co-defendant, he's on the brink right now fighting for exoneration. Hopefully he'll be getting that within a month or two. That would trigger a lot of different things with me automatically. And me, myself, I got stuff going on I really can't talk about, but it's things going on that the fight continues. You know, things... It's bittersweet for me. This whole situation is bittersweet for me. It's never supposed to happen like this, and I'm glad I got a platform to talk about it, to educate society who feel that this doesn't take place.
Yes, yes.
And Lorenzo's done. Speaking of that platform, Lorenzo, you know, you've done a number of speaking engagements, and you've done a number of interviews. Some of both of those with me, some of them without me. And my rhetorical question I would ask is, would a guilty person be doing this now? At this point, you're home. What is the point now?
Yeah.
Right? But that's another thing. Just like a guilty person is not going to turn themselves back in.
Right. Yeah. But here's the thing. Most people aren't aware of some of the impact. They think, oh, it's a story, it's sad, but it's his story, you know. And so
Can happen to anyone.
Yes, exactly. But here's the damage that happens as a result of it as well. So this is from 2015. According to the New York Innocence Project, 52% of New York's DNA exonerations involved eyewitness misidentification. 48% of New York's DNA exonerations involved a false confession. And of the 330 DNA exonerations, 150 actual perpetrators were identified, went on to commit 70 sexual assaults, 30 murders, and 25 other violent crimes in New York. 11 real perpetrators identified went on to commit 5 murders and 3 rapes. So the people who are guilty are out there impacting society. So if nothing else, you got to pay attention to that.
And that's another thing, that the guilt of the innocent person pleading guilty or taking Alfred plea or nolo contender plea, that's another impact, is because as far as law enforcement's concerned, they're not out there looking for the actual perpetrator.
That's right.
They think, as far as they're concerned, the case is solved.
As in your case, the other guy went and killed someone else.
Right.
So I'm going to jump ship for a minute and just get into the more personal aspect of this. I hope people pay attention. And, you know, I remember when I interviewed you and you said, you know, you were 16 and you thought, oh, if people are in jail, it means they must have done something wrong, you know? And I think society generally tends to think that, although they're being awakened to some of it now, especially since it's more in the news that, you know, people are exonerated because of DNA. But I think we have to pay attention because, as we all agree, this could happen to anyone. And also, again, real people, innocent people are sent to prison, and the real perpetrators are out there continuing to do what they're doing. But I want to ask you, Jeffrey, you know, you've been out now for how many years?
10.
10 years. And, you know, your life will never be what it could have been. And I remember listening to you being interviewed, and you know, you had legal cases and you got millions of dollars and you used that to create the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation. But I remember somewhere along the way you said, I'd give it all back and then some if I could get those 16 years back. So I don't think you ever fully recover from something like this. What for you would you say is the main thing that might be missing in the way you experience life that you would have had if you hadn't been in prison, wrongfully convicted?
Yeah, my life cycle would have unfolded in the traditional or normal manner, meaning that I would have went to the high school prom, graduated high school, finished my education at a more traditional age, been into a career, perhaps been married, maybe have a family, and other things that I experienced much later in life. I mean, it was like at 33 where I first started living on my own apartment to balance a checkbook to get a driver's license. So even now, I'm 44 physically, but I don't feel like the emotional and the psychological, I don't feel like I'm that age. There's this disconnect, and I feel like I'm much younger than what I was.
Yeah, and not younger in a good way.
Younger not in a good way.
In an unskilled way.
Not like I'm in all my glory and I've discovered the fountain of youth. No, but this is in a disconcerting type of way. So, and you
and I had a conversation off camera where this year or last year you went to your high school reunion.
Yeah, this past summer, yes.
And I thought what was really interesting was that people embraced you and welcomed you, but they also expressed some guilt in the fact that when you were on trial and sent to jail, that some of them believed you must have been guilty.
Yes, most of them did, because that's what you do when the authorities have arrested you, and then, you know, the news with the guilt presumptive oriented and it being a major media moment, and then of course that was facilitated by the fact that the police coerced a false confession out of me, and of course only a guilty person confesses.
Would do that, yeah.
Right? So there was that guilt that they feel, but then also that I feel like something was missing from their life too. Like when I was, you know, some of them were friends of mine or even just associates from a distance, but I was kind of ripped from them, so that affected them in a number of ways.
Yeah, talk about a long-lasting collateral effect. And I want to ask you in the last few minutes, so, you're still in the struggle of it. First of all, I have to acknowledge what kind of human beings you are, first of all, because unbelievable to have gone through what you went through and to be sitting here running successful lives, fighting the good fight, committed to making a difference. I mean, it just blows me away. So,
Thanks.
I want to acknowledge you for that. But so in the midst of all of this, is there the good news?
Yeah. A lot of people say, how do you adapt back into society?
Yeah.
So if other people were strange, but to me, it's like I never left because I never was supposed to be gone. So I always kept in tune with what was going on, family, stuff like that. It just, I needed the opportunity to live it.
Yeah.
So me being back, that's what's going to take place. My fight now, my fight been for the last 22 years is, to prove my innocence. But it's a passion of being an innocent prisoner. Like, if you get a platform to talk, you must talk for the people that you left behind. Because I've met people that's, with the right assistance, they might got a chance to get out that's innocent. I got some that would never see the light of day again. Only the way they see society is do a visit because they was framed so bad. And I got some people in there that just gave up because the endless resources they were fighting, they caved into the force. So I took it on my, not to play Superman, but to tell my story. And my story is a lot of other people's stories. One thing that all innocent prisoners share is the fact that they was innocent. It don't matter if they had a DNA case, a shooting murder case, a strangulation case, or any kind of case, whether it could be a stolen bag case, they was innocent. So they got something in common. It might unfold different ways how they was framed or whatever, but they share a certain bond of being innocent. So I felt the platform that I was given, I must speak on it.
Thank you. We're out of time. Thank you so much for telling your stories, for being advocates, for doing the work you're doing, and good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Natasha Sherman. Thank you for joining us.